And let me tell you about the Higher Self Expo July 2021. It's a 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. Today's guest is a guest speaker at this event. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com. Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology, and I've got a feel good conversation that is, I think, pretty cool. If you're the sort of person that's had ups and downs, and you've had moments of confusion, an experience of having needed to put on a brave face or a happy face, you know, that kind of continuous hamster wheel feeling that we might get, that, wow, where is my life taking place, and what's going on? My guest today is someone who's faced that in himself and also continues to face that, because obviously, no matter how healed we get, these things do crop up from time to time. He's somebody who has experienced a corporate 9-to-5 and then has been able to release himself from that and found a way to live what feels like his soul destiny, or is his soul destiny, and the ability to connect into something and make a difference. So this is, I guess, a story of the courageous path of the heart, which really fits into my guest's work and also his website. If you're listening now, you'll come across all sorts of subjects that we talk about, from identity to intentional communities, World Unity Week, outsourcing authority, and the dangers of doing that. You know, what can we hope to achieve with that? But also some of the conflicts that might come up in our day-to-day life that prevent us from living our soul destiny. So this is a very, very involved conversation. So my guest is an international speaker, a presenter, facilitator. He's an empath, and also somebody who's very experienced in helping people, helping their soul come out, you know, like helping them listen to their soul and connect in. He works with people very closely to help them in their own individual journeys, and he holds space. He's a really good space holder. He has connected to people from all over the world in all different situations, from indigenous tribes to, you know, normal Western civilization, and he's also been quite closely linked into intentional communities and how they work. So this is somebody that I think has a very, very strong and powerful message. Should we bring him on? Okay, let me just tell you, my guest today is Nicolas Perrin, and he has his website, lionheartcoaching.com.au. Let's bring him on now, shall we? So it's my absolute great pleasure to invite our guest on today and introduce you to him. It is Nicolas Perrin. Hi, Nicolas. How are you today?
Louisa, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. And thank you to the viewers for co-creating in this conversation today. May we share some beautiful wisdom and nuggets of gold. And I'm trusting that it will support the people out there at this time.
What a beautiful intention to start this off with. Thank you so much. And I love it because it actually fits in. I was having a little snoop around this morning and had another good look at your website, which is great, by the way. I really like it. But I noticed the strap line, and this is where I want to start. The strap line says, live your soul destiny and make a difference. That really fits in with your intention. Can you tell me, how did you come up with that as a strap line for you?
The tagline, or I've never heard the term strap line. That's a new one. So essentially my whole journey was, I was in the corporate world. I was living very much in the 9-to-5, as I call it, and was orientating my life through my mind and through my head. And what I realized was that as I became more intuitively aligned and as I became more heart-centered, which was a process, because when I started this journey, when I went and worked with an energy healer clairvoyant, she literally said to me, oh my God, you've got like a bank vault around your heart, right? So she said, today we're going to drill 6 holes into the concrete bunker, right? And we're going to start from there. I'll never forget it. It was quite funny. So I know what it's like to not have to have no access to my heart, or not really know, someone had said to me, around 2007, live from your heart or be heartfelt, I wouldn't have known what they were talking about. I had no reference points of that. So my whole journey has been not being that, and then my guidance, and luckily through the mentors and teachers that I've had, and just through my own intuitive guidance, has been that is the way that you can live a life that is aligned to your soul destiny blueprint, or the life that at a soul or being level you would love to be living and co-creating through. So so in a sense, it's like the heart portal or the heart space is the epicenter of our being, and it so happens to also be we can access everything and everyone in the universe. So all knowledge, information, insight comes from that place. But also energetically, it's like someone that feels alone or someone that feels disconnected, it's because they're not connected to their own heart. So when we connect to our own heart, we can become source connected, and then through there, it's like, for me, I feel like a oneness with everything. And when I place my awareness in my heart, it's like when I'm relaxed in that space, it's like everything just works. Like everything that I'm just sharing with you right now is just flowing through me, not actually thinking it.
Yeah.
And so it becomes easeful. And it's like I can be in the present moment, be fully present with you, and feel and speak through the heart, rather than trying to work out what I'm trying to say or what I think I should say or what I think you want me to say.
No, don't do that.
No.
I really want your authentic self here. So I love what you said there. So to kind of paraphrase, you spent the first part of your life in a kind of concrete bunker, not literally in a concrete bunker, but your heart was all kind of, wrapped up. And you had no real concept of what, like if someone had said, live from your heart, you just wouldn't have understood it.
Not at all. No.
You came across this woman. Was it a woman?
It was, yes. And that was Roz.
There was this kind of heart opening. Did it happen suddenly, or?
It was a gradual process. It was not sudden for me. So she also said, look, it wouldn't be wise just for you to open your heart, because one of the benefits I guess I had was that I had very strong barriers, right? And she was basically saying what we need to do is we need to slowly bring down the barriers, but at the same time you need to create strong boundaries. Wow. So you didn't want to just let go of the barriers, because I would have just been completely open and then had no real sense of what was good for me or not good for me, because the default experience that I had at the time was everything and everyone stay away from me, right? That's what a barrier does. It just keeps everything out, whereas a boundary allows you to orientate through your values and be clear, like what are my yeses, what are my nos, what is it that I want to welcome into my life, who do I want to welcome into my life? And right, so it's there's an osmosis element there. So I allow people in, but the things that I'm not aligning with, I'm like, no to that, right? But I am allowing things in. So barriers don't do that. So for me, it was a process of releasing these barriers over a period of time and creating boundaries. And that doesn't happen instantly. There's a process. Another teacher called Dr. Bradley Nelson, and I did the emotion code and then eventually the body code, has a whole section called the heart wall. So if anyone out there, if you're struggling, if you feel your heart's closed, or if you feel like there's really a strong separation between you and the world, you probably have a heart wall, and there is a body of work that looks at that very specifically, and it's called the emotion code. That was the original body of work, and then it evolved into the body code.
Wow. There's so much I could pick from this and explore. I love the idea that there are these other resources, and we work, both of us, in a world where there's so much stuff now. It's almost impossible not to connect with something that really resonates when you're really at a crossroads. There's so much material out there. It's interesting what you were saying, because I've never really considered what it's like to be coming from that closed position to opening up. I was interviewing a speaker. You're a host at the Higher Self Expo, aren't you?
Yes, for the Australian segment.
Yeah, and you're also a presenter, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on. And so am I. And I was interviewing a young lady called Ashley Dufresne, who is a speaker in the US segment, and she's an empath like me. And so we were actually talking about what it's like when you're born open. And how you have to actually put up boundaries, and all the sort of pitfalls involved. So this is kind of like a reverso.
It's a reverso, although I'm also empathic. So
Yeah,
it was kind of handy in that way, because I was kind of in my own little bubble, basically.
yeah,
But there are consequences to that. But it's interesting, getting back to the lion heart path and following your heart. One of the purposes of my life was, to be a speaker. Self-expression is a huge part of that. So we always, like, the challenges in our life are always connected to our gifts, right? There's always whatever it is we have to work through. It's in alignment with our gifts. So of course, the thing that I hated the most was public speaking. I hated being seen in front of groups. That was it was a lot of fear, a lot of resistance. In fact, even terror. I even had experiences as a child when we had our oral examinations back in the day, and you had to stand up in front of the class, and my body would shake and tremble, and I'd perspire, my hands would sweat, and really it was incredibly challenging and incredibly uncomfortable. I absolutely hated it. And never in my wildest dreams would I if someone had said to me, you'd be doing presenting work or speaking or any of that, it would have been the last thing on the planet. So it's interesting, but part of the path for me to get in touch with the speaking abilities was to, again, break through this heart wall and to feel safe, because ultimately it's coming down from the paradigm of not feeling safe, not feeling secure, and feeling that who I am won't be received by the outer world. Like, who I am is not okay, and what it is that I have to share is also not okay. So that has been the journey that I've had to go on. And therefore, it makes sense that part of the offerings that I offer now is helping people to get in touch. What is it that you are here to bring and to share with humanity? And as a natural result of that, what are sort of the key shadow lessons, learnings, or soul themes? That's another way you could call it, soul themes, overarching themes, including the shadow elements that you need to explore and dive into and integrate in order for you to actualize and step into your gifts, talents, and abilities, and therefore to be of service to others.
Yeah, I hear you. Absolutely. And one thing I noticed from your website earlier, you kind of put up a little list of things that you might be doing that might help you recognize that it's time for authentic living. Are you feeling confused? Are you putting on a happy face? Does it feel like you're in a bit of a hamster wheel? And the fact that, we might need rescuing at some level. I think most of us can actually resonate with that and remember being in that state at some point. And in terms of the sort of rescuing, I think most people that are able to work as an empath or as a light worker, healer, in someone who inspires others and who helps guide them, most of them at some point have come across a really good mentor who has allowed them that space to really feel like it's okay for them to start unpacking themselves and getting them on the process. And so from the lady that kind of helped you recognize that in yourself, you're now doing that and helping other people do that for other people. So kind of really spreading that. So there's a whole theme of mentorship as well. I know before we started talking, I said, right, we've got these themes to go through, but I now want to put in mentorship. Why is that so important, to offer that?
Yeah, so ultimately, you touched on something really important before, where people can come and receive healing, right? And there are plenty of healers out there. But in a sense, a lot of the time you show up, you either lie on a bed or you sit down, or it can be done remotely. The person does their magic. They go through an energetic rebalancing, kick you out the door, out you go, get back into life, and off you go. And then, until there's another problem or something, you come back in. What I realized actually was that to really help people, wouldn't it be more useful to share with them the tools and the techniques and the whereabouts for them to actually do most of that themselves. So I realized, look, we all need support, we all need guidance. And you mentioned that we've all had those experiences of hitting crossroads, of being confused, of not knowing what the next step is. So that's normal, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
However, we don't always need to go in and receive healing from people. And it's much more empowering, it's self-empowering to take responsibility and to at least learn the basics, at least learn, you know, how can you change thought patterns and move energies and be grounded and reorientate your mind, and at least have an understanding of when things are unfolding in your life, what is really going on below the surface. And so I realized with the mentorships, it was so much more exciting for me to work with people, to teach them things, help them integrate it, and then they would actually share every day. They would send me a voice memo. This is what unfolded in my day. These were the practices that I've done. This is what I noticed, right? And then if they had any questions, or if they're like, not sure if I did this right, or this is what happened in my day, this is what I think it means, can you just tune in and give me a little bit of support? And I just noticed that people just took hold of their own life so much more, because I said, I'm not going to do it for you. Yeah. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you, not to actually help you. My intention is that by the time we finish working together, you've got this, right? And you can go on with your life, keep working on some of the key themes, and until you hit another major crossroad, you're fine, right? And it, you know, even for people, like I've even worked with people that have just started out their journey, you know, with a lot of the big emotional ups and downs and significant turbulence in their life. And with just having a solid structure, getting them to implement a daily practice, but getting them to recognize, I'm not doing it for you. You are the one doing it. Therefore, the results that you receive for yourself, you pat yourself on the back because that's your hard work that you've done. But just noticing significant difference in terms of what people get out of it, get out of it. Because I started the work as a healer and doing energy transformation work, but it hit a point in my life where I realized how much of service am I actually being in this way. I questioned it, and I just realized also for me naturally, I'm more a teacher rather than a healer. So I also just followed that natural synchronicity and just wanted to honor that gift and just the true path of what I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And God, I heard so many things in that, Nicholas. I want to come back to, because one of them, you know, the idea that, you know, you're helping people teach the tools so they do it themselves. You know, one thing to kind of really stress, and I'm sure, you know, it's implied anyway, like you and I probably do have moments where we still feel confused, right? Or that we might be putting on a happy face, or we might feel like, is my life turning into a hamster wheel already? And you have taught yourself, or you have some tools that you use on yourself. And, you know, we're not like, nobody completely ever heals in a way. Well, I mean, sometimes I guess it is a possibility that people can fully heal and be on their journey and not have any hiccups. But more practically, most people are going to have problems, and they're going to have these moments where they start doubting themselves. And so you're teaching skills for life and teaching them how to recognize when they're about to relapse, you know, when they need to pull the socks up. And I guess it's a bit like, you know, people have diets, you know, some people have diets and they have one day where they completely come off and they binge on chocolate or something, and then they think that's the end of the diet. But what they don't always realize is you just start again the next day, don't you? You say,
exactly,
okay, draw a line there, that didn't work, but let's start again and maybe do it in a slightly new way.
Completely.
So is that kind of how you're working, you know, also making people ready to, you know, pick themselves up?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's a sense of self-empowerment, and look, you know, no one's perfect. And I would say that with the healing, what I've noticed is you tend to go through different cycles. So there might be a theme, you know, so it might be the theme of unlovability, or self-acceptance, right? As a very common theme that many people go through. Then there might be another theme of self-sabotage. Every time I try and step up and out into my life, try and put myself out there or do something that I've never done before, I sabotage myself. So there might be another theme. So it's not like healing is ever done, but it's like hopefully we integrate those elements over time, and we've integrated to a certain level, a certain degree, and then something else presents itself, you know, because really, like even with visioning, or even when we're going down our soul path or the path of our beingness, it's like we're integrating our egoic nature, but we're also integrating ancestral energies. We're integrating other life lesson energies. There's lots of inputs, and we actually, the truth is we really have no idea, right? The unconscious is unconscious, and we only become aware of it when there's a sense of contrast in our everyday living. And so we can't really say, look, I've absolutely healed that. We can say it's not showing up in my life anymore, or in my relationships with other people, or in my own inner dialogue. What I'm noticing is that it's now shifted into something more positive, and that's amazing. That's really, really great. And so I think that's a healthier way of navigating, because otherwise, let's say someone says to themselves, completely healed myself of whatever, then you create like a self-identity around who you think you are. And then if it was to show up in the future again, you would actually go into denial, right? Oh, that's not me. I've healed that. I've done that. That couldn't possibly be me. And that can create a very unhealthy dynamic.
Yeah, I love that you've touched on identity there, like self-identity, because I know in my own journey, I was so focused on what I did for my living, because I was sort of very 9-to-5 corporate, that it's very difficult to come out of that and to see yourself. Like, you have to really be allowed to drop that and know that it's a possibility. I went to, I was living in Bali for a short while, and I remember when I went there, meeting people and saying, "Hi, I'm Louisa. How are you? What do you do?" You know, that would be one of my questions I'd ask people. And I didn't realize how weird it was, but I was so surprised that everyone I kept meeting looked really odd when I asked them that question, because they'd already learned to drop that identity, you know, and you realize it's not about what you do. It's like, who are you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, in the indigenous tribes, you know, people were more interested, like, who's your family? You know, who's your tribe? Who's your mob? That kind of thing, like, just to kind of try and place you, you know, not around what you do, not at all. But in the modern day world, in the mainstream world, people spend so much of their time in career that it also kind of makes sense, because that is where most people are putting their time and their energy. So that's how they're orientating themselves in the world, because then they're paying other people to look after their kids and all of the other things, because they're putting all their energy and time into their work.
And I think the identity, like the almost like addiction to identity, is one of the biggest things to counter, isn't it? You know, when you're waking up to yourself. And that kind of leads on to the idea of outsourcing authority as well, because, you know, I guess in the process of helping people, you're working with people to become their own authority, to become more sovereign, and to I mean, what are the dangers of outsourcing authority in your perspective?
Well, the thing is, someone that outsources their authority is giving their power away. So what that really means is, like, I'm not able to come up with the answers for myself, and therefore I'm going to give my power away to a government or an institution or to an organization or even to a teacher. I mean, even in the spiritual world, because that programming is so strong, a lot of people that are relatively new to the path, they give their power away to a teacher, to an authority, and want that person to solve their life. Tell me what I need to do, make my life better. And really what's happening is they're not taking responsibility for their own life. Now, the consequence of that is that if things don't go how the person is expecting it to go, they feel resentment and anger and frustration towards that other person. But the irony is that the other person cannot make your life better. It's not possible. And that's why, in our modern day life, so in the modern day world, so many people feel this level of complacency or just this kind of emptiness or this kind of unfulfilled sense of life, because they're thinking that someone else out there, whether it's my partner or my work or the government, is responsible for making my life feel better. It just doesn't work. So by reclaiming your authority through reclaiming your power, which then what that means is ultimately going, well, what are my values? What's actually important to me at a being level? So we've got to go through all the deconditioning, which is what you were just talking about before. The job is just one part of it. But the other part of it is all the unconscious conditioning and programming and the values that society tells us what's important, right? Looking for approval outside of yourself, validation from others, seeking security through properties and money and all of these external elements, which we're now starting to see really can change very quickly. Right? And the external world can change very quickly. There's no real guarantees with anything. So by outsourcing our power outside of ourselves, we then become prone to becoming very fearful, because we don't actually feel like we're in control. Because we believe that other people or these institutions outside of us have all the control. And so ultimately we become quite fearful, afraid, small, insecure people that have anxiety and stress and worry, which is what most people are living in. So really, by choosing to be sovereign, which is taking responsibility back for your life, finding out what your values are, how do you want to live life, but then also recognizing that one of the shadow elements of that process is that people then think, well, I can just do what I want, and who cares about other people? And the reality is we are living on a planet with other people. And so as we evolve, it becomes about honoring your own sovereignty and what's important to you, but recognizing and bringing in heart and compassion and awareness of others, and making decisions on what's the highest and best decision for us all. Right? So it's not just about me. It's also not just about others. So both of those are shadow elements there. It's what's the highest and best for all. And there's not always a clear-cut answer. But again, when we become inner-resourced, if we're accessing through the intelligence through our heart, then the heart space is what actually connects us to everything and everyone. And so we can take into account other people. Whereas if we're orientating only through the mind, which is really just through thinking and through concept, it doesn't really have any capacity to really know what it's like for anyone else. So we could only guess. We'd be really guessing. So that's another reason why we want to be connected to the heart, because you make decisions not only that are good for you, but are good for other people.
I love that. In fact, we've just gone round and right back to the beginning of the conversation, actually, because right at the beginning you were talking about being kind of shut down and then opening, but doing it with sensible boundaries. And so I guess through talking through how you work and how you work with other people and the learning that we're all sovereign beings, we're now learning that, are we going to be boundaried and just think for ourselves and do things that please us only and create harm to others? Or are we going to open up to the possibility of others and sharing? And then where are the logical boundaries? Now, I know you've done quite a bit of research on intentional communities. Is that one of the solutions that you see sort of answering that need?
Totally. And look, so what I realized in my own journey is that we go through an awakening, we go through our own internal transmutational process, and we then go through a journey of connecting to our higher self, starting to embody that, going through shadow integration processes. That, as you mentioned, there's multiple cycles and spirals and depths and levels of learning and realization. Okay. And then, but ultimately what happens is, if the intention is I choose to orientate through my true authentic nature, as in I choose to integrate my human vehicle with the eternal divine element of who I truly am, beyond time, space, and dimensions, then naturally what happens is we start to question the environments that we're in, which is why a lot of people eventually quit their 9-to-5 jobs because they realize that that way of living is out of alignment to who I now am, right? So again, the fundamental question is, was I born to work to live, or was I born to live to work, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I'm here and I choose to express my genius into the world and contribute in that way. So there's still work, in the sense there's still effort and there's still energy that we're doing it, but we're doing it from a place of joy and from a place of contribution. Whereas the other one is it's from a place of survival. It's I'm working to earn money, to pay the bills, but really there isn't any kind of sense of higher purpose or any collective contribution or anything. And people in city environments are really just orientating in their own little worlds, thinking about themselves with very little awareness of where are we going as a group, as a collective, even as a species, right? And I'm not going to even go into all of the arguments around the environmental degradation and all of the negative impacts of how our societies currently function. But basically, just to segue it into intentional communities, it's like those intentional communities are ways, it's a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone to encourage people that have awakened to then go, what's your individual vision, right? And does your individual vision tap into a collective vision for this intentional community? And obviously, different intentional communities have different visions and they have different reasons for being birthed. For example, some are more permaculture orientated. So the people that are naturally drawn there, they're more earthy. They love to work with the soils and plants, and they love that, right? And then you've got more spiritual intentional communities, which is more orientated around energy and magic and ceremonies and rituals and all of those things. So you might have different groups of people that are drawn together for different reasons. But I do believe that intentional communities is going to be a stepping stone in order for people who have awakened to meet other people, to be in communion, right? And to learn that skill, as in, what is it that I'm here to contribute, and how do I now relate to others in a healthy way, where we as a collective are creating something that we all believe is going to be better for ourselves, for our future generations, and ultimately to feed that back into the collective so that that can be actually a healthy living example for the wider population.
Yeah. I love the fact that you've put that extra bit in at the end, that it is kind of a responsibility to share what you're learning into the main collective so they can see that as an example, because there aren't many examples that we get to hear about necessarily, unless you're actively looking for that kind of thing.
Correct.
And I think there's a collective fear, the sort of mainstream example fears change. There is this sort of, it doesn't want to lose its property, it doesn't want to lose its ideas of the wealth that defines it. So there's quite a few boundaries there. Forgive me if you saw my eyes roll through what you were saying. I've got a 2-year-old in the background having a temper tantrum. So I was just thinking I was going to have to put my headphones down and go, right, and go and sort something out. But it sounds like it's under control. We have our own sort of intentional community ourselves of a very small family. And I guess this is how it is working at home now. Sometimes worlds do merge.
Totally. And it's like, that's what's grabbing my attention. So what am I going to do about it? Right.
Yeah.
I get it. So yeah, if you did throw down your headset and ran off, I wouldn't take it personally.
I'm just going to quickly cut and just check, and then I'll come back. It won't be a sec.
Sure.
Right. That's 38 minutes. So I'll do a cut there. It's hard being two, isn't it?
It is, because when you're a 2-year-old, it's like, there isn't they just allow their emotions to flow. You're not happy, you express it.
Yeah. And it's my husband hasn't had a lie-in, so he's a bit grumpy.
Right. Okay. Yeah, he was hoping to have his lie-in.
I don't know if there's a little bit of kind of like, let's make it a bit noisy. I think he might be sort of passively expressing some of his. He's a bit pissed off that I've done so many interviews, actually. So,
right. Okay.
To last one, but he's done well. It's been quite a process. Anyway, right. Let's cut back in. How do you think we're doing so far?
We're doing really well. I think the themes are really flowing, and there's so many different nuggets in here, and so we basically now we've segued from individual awakening into collective congregating, collective thinking. I would like to answer, because you basically you talked about how people in the mainstream world wouldn't want to let go of what it is that they've accumulated. So I want to address that, because that's actually a really good, really good question or consideration. Yeah. So what came to me when I was communing with Spirit about that, what came through is that ultimately this is going to be a long process. This isn't going to be a 5-year plan and everyone's going to be in an intentional community. It's not going to work like that. But ultimately we're going to have case studies that are created all around the world. So groups of people that choose to be there, they want to be there, they feel called, like it's part of their purpose and contribution to be a part of, let's say, these education learning hubs where people come for the purposes of creating a case study, not only for a case study, but to actually be an intentional community, but to create a case study that then feeds back into the collective. And really the purpose of that is really just to share with people for the purposes of education and informing, that there just is an alternative, right? Yeah. And it's really to connect with people that are going through an awakening process, because people that are not going through the awakening process, that are living through the mainstream collective unconscious value system, probably wouldn't be interested in any way, right? Yeah. So it's not to attract those people, because it wouldn't actually resonate for them. It wouldn't be vibing for them. And if those people were to go into an intentional community, it probably wouldn't work. It just wouldn't, because how they are orientating through being more individuated or more individually orientated isn't going to work if you want to go into a collective. So what I see is that ultimately over time, these communities will naturally pop up, people that want to be there. Case studies will be built as people in the city environments naturally awaken, that they are informed that there is an alternative. Some of these people may then choose to actually move into intentional communities. Obviously, some people will stay in the city environments to be the healers and the yoga teachers and the whatever educators to actually help people in the cities, right? And then over a period of time, I actually feel that the city structures will probably transform. Now, exactly how that looks, I don't know, but I've met people out in the world that are quite passionate about transforming our urban environments where there is more harmony and balance and more nature and more working together and changing the systems and the structures of city living, where it becomes more community orientated. So how that looks, whether it's like a suburb becomes a community, I'm not sure, and there's probably many different ways of doing it. But it's going to be a process.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things that I've observed is that there's a lot of people house sharing. Like when I was in my 20s and all corporate, when I was living with my boyfriend at the time, like I think when people go into couples, they tend to steer away from their friends. All of a sudden, it's something that they want to go into themselves. But once that relationship had come to an end, I was inviting people to live with me. So, we had a constant flow. So I see that as something that can change. I see a lot of young people living together, and whether they realize it or not, they're actually starting to form little communities or form sort of powerful connections. They are learning to live with each other, even if they're not doing it intentionally. And when people tend to get together, want to create a family, they often want to go off on their own. And actually, I think that's where there's quite a bit of opportunity, because it's very difficult to raise children in an environment where you have to do it all on your own. Before I met my husband, I was living in Bali, and I was very grateful for that experience, because I saw that the children, they're not put down, like literally, they're not like put on the floor. They're carried everywhere. Their children are revered. And if the mum is busy with another child, there's a cousin, there's an auntie, there's an uncle, there's a neighbor. In fact, they all breastfeed together. They share their breasts, with other people's babies. And there must be a real sense of trust going on to do that. And I don't think many Western women growing up with their sort of nuclear family ideals are very comfortable. They don't really see that as an example, but it's practiced pretty much everywhere else in the world, where man hasn't tried to interfere and say, this is what you need. So I think that's interesting. We've just started, we've just kind of adopted an elderly member of our family, and she's adopted us. So we're living with an 82-year-old lady who is in a wheelchair, and she's got a really lovely house, and she wants that feeling of safety. And so this is her first step and our first step in sharing our joy and love with her and her wisdom. And we're seeing how that goes. We've been together for about 2 months now, and she's actually made it very clear. We've signed contracts and all sorts, but she said,
wow.
You move, you have to take me with you. She's part of our family now.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's
hoping, that this could also become a model. Like in preparation for it, we were in touch with a Portuguese company that matches young adults or just individuals who want to live with an older person. And I think they do it for short spells of, say, 6 months to a year, and they're all matched through an organization, and they do a bit of coaching. But matching families is quite difficult, because families tend to take over.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So it would depend on the personality.
Yeah.
Depend on the personality of the person as well. But it's beautiful, because unfortunately that's another side effect of the mainstream ways, that when people get older, they get shipped off to retirement villages, and you're kind of just waiting to die. I mean, it's really quite a terrible way of being. Whereas in the indigenous cultures from all around the world, like the older people actually raised the kids so that the adults could actually get on with running the community or the village. So there was a place, and obviously the elders, were the wisdom keepers and held counsel and all of that. So it was like an honor and a privilege, to be an older person in your community, and to be able to share that insight and wisdom with the people that you're now guiding. But in our mainstream world now, it's all different and all changed. And so I believe that part of intentional community living, there'll be more of an integration with all the different generations, so that, people that are older will have connections with people that are, middle-aged adults, younger age adults, teenagers and children as well, and for there to be more of an integration across all ages.
Yeah. Amen to that. Yes, I love that. And I actually see in my parents' generation, they're the baby boomers. They're the late baby boomers. They're in their early 70s. I see that there's a real reticence to commune together, almost like part of their generation was about radical independence, and home ownership and pension plans and a job for life, and they almost seem to be at the top of a pyramid, and all the generations underneath that, have to kind of fall in line. But I don't think they were raising children necessarily. I don't know how old your parents are, but I don't think they were raising their children in a way that they expected their children to stick around and live together and be responsible for each other. A lot of people my parents' age, from their friendship groups, their idea has been to retire and like just completely stop working, and then do golf and swimming and meet for coffee, and not much actually in the community other than helping themselves and possibly their friends. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're not all heartless people, but it's almost like the vision for them of being a magnificent elder is just not there. I do know that there's a lot of grandparents out there that look after their grandchildren while the parents are at work, but they don't necessarily share houses, or and I think they're part of a new vision. But there's a lot. I mean, when my husband's father died, he asked his stepdad, who had been in his life for 40 years, he said, "Look, my dad's gone. Would you be like my surrogate dad now? I need an elder." And he just said no. He was like really shocked. And I've had conversations with some of my mum and dad's friends, my parents themselves, about the idea of them sort of being an elder and standing up, and there's just this kind of feeling of abhorrence. Like the term I hear the most is, we've done our work and now it's time for us to not work.
Yes.
And I think it's a very strange thing, because for me, and I think probably you as well, I think we're quite lucky in as much as our work is also our purpose.
Correct.
I don't ever anticipate ever not working. And if I'm not doing the work that I'm doing, my intention is to plant trees or look after children and tell stories or do whatever I can to help the collective. It seems such an odd thing to do, to suddenly say, that's the end of my purpose and here I am.
Well, the thing is, like, you're talking about the American dream, because the American dream was get a job, work really hard.
Yeah.
You retire, you've got your house, your white picket fence, your family, your car, right? Hopefully by the time that you've stopped working, you don't have a mortgage anymore and you've got some money to live on, and then enjoy your life. So it was a delayed gratification model. So, but again, it's very individually orientated. There's not really much about community there. So, the whole idea of having elders or becoming an elder was more, in the society models of, other cultures, indigenous cultures from all around the world. But there is a benefit with that, because it's like, as you said, your usefulness is maintained. And also, when you were moving through your life, there was time for community, for relating, for spiritual development. Yes, everyone had to work and stuff. However, it wasn't done in the same level of intensity as to what people in the mainstream world are having to do now. So it's a little bit like, you just work really hard for a period of time and then, okay, now relax. Now I don't want to think about anything else. So it's just a completely different model.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel kind of badly for that generation, because I feel that they've been sold a dud dream. I mean, it's their choice to engage in it or not. But it's almost like they've imprisoned their soul somehow, in this idea of this perfect life. And it seems so, there's no mess in it, the mess of human interaction.
Well, the whole, materialism and consumerism really took off after World War II, right? So in the 50s, that's when, household appliances and, if you speak to your grandparents, like, they would have things that would last 10, 20 years, right? Be really good quality thing. It would last for a long time. Now things last, what, a year, 2, 3?
You're lucky.
If you're lucky, right? It's shocking. So it's just, again, the whole, how our society has evolved and what we've prioritized and what we think is important has just radically changed, and, from my point of view, I don't feel for the better.
Yeah. Throw away things and throw away relationships. And
everything's very dispensable, disposable. Exactly.
Yeah. So with this in mind, what kind of activities have you been up to this week, Nicholas?
Yes. So today, in alignment with another lockdown, unfortunately, Sydney's just gone into a two-week lockdown. I did have the honour of being able to participate in a co-created sacred conversation as part of World Unity Week. So World Unity Week is a big online conference. They had 33 different rooms, hundreds and hundreds of facilitators, and amazing visionaries and evolutionary beings and sages that are trying to support humanity. A lot of people pouring their heart and love. And so I was involved in a particular just a 1-hour segment, sacred conversation with about 6 people, just exploring the birthing of the new human, or from my point of view, really the remembrance of the divine human being. We've always been this. This is not actually something new. And just exploring the different questions that really pertained around that. And yeah, it was a very beautiful conversation with 6 of us. And it was a really lovely way to start my morning. It was my morning when we had that conversation.
Wow. And then what came out of those conversations? Is there anything you can share with us?
Yeah, so some of the key highlights were, again, people really talking about the union of the masculine and feminine within. Mm-hmm. And what does that look like? Again, we were talking about the importance of relationships and using relationships as a way to actually get reflections back on where am I at in my own integration. Yeah. We had to look at, well, what does the actual new human look like? What are some of the characteristics, right? So people were just talking about responsibility and, again, being introspectively orientated, expressing their genius into the world, again, recognizing that we have both masculine and feminine energies within us. Yeah. And if there's a problem that we are experiencing in life, that it's something that we need to address within ourselves and not project it, blame it, or outsource it to the outside. So yeah, so those are some of the themes of that conversation.
That's interesting. Like the idea of projection, to me, is showing that conflict resolution is something that people aren't very comfortable with. We haven't really learned how to do it, and that might tie into the idea of disposable friendships and, you know, a life of where if we don't like something, we just move away from it.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't have to work at anything. I mean, there are so many in relating better to people, but it takes a lot of trust. And if trust is thin on the ground, where'd you go?
Yes, trust, safety, and also just a willingness to actually explore, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, there's a conflict that's arisen in this relationship or in this dynamic with this person, and there's something for me to explore, there's something for the other person to explore. Can we both lean in from a place of curiosity? We don't actually have to agree in terms of, we don't have to see it from the same perspective. I think that's where a lot of people maybe go wrong, because both people are trying to convince the other person to see it from their perspective, right? and of course, you're not going to see it from the other person's perspective, because we haven't lived their life. They've lived a different life. They have different experiences. They have different conditioning, different trauma, different wounds, different shadow elements. So we're not going to see it from the same perspective. But if we can step back and look at it from an energetic point of view, as in just there's different energies that get pulled into a space together. You know, so for example, you know, one that I'm very familiar with for myself is because I had the barriers, which I talked about at the beginning of the conversation. I can be avoidant, right? So what happens is, so freedom as a value is very important to me, right? I tend to attract people that are very, they have attachment, right? They have a very strong, very strong need to be close, right? So if I pull away, then that wound gets really activated for them. They're like, oh, you're rejected. So it activates the rejection abandonment wound, right? So those two different energies will come together because they want to come together, because they want to highlight that's what you both need to work on.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you need to look at. So for me, the big lesson's been actually one of the deep dives that I've done is like, how can I just, in my discomfort of feeling this person's wanting to kind of consume me almost, that's how it feels, right? How can I just be in that and just not react to it, right? It still feels really uncomfortable. Like I want to move away from it. But what happens if I don't? And just to breathe in that. So for me, it's just to recognize that freedom is something that I experience within myself. It's no one can take my freedom away from me. So by using those situations in that kind of way over a period of time, we untangle ourselves from it and create a different experience. It doesn't necessarily always change immediately, but if there's that desire to go in with curiosity and awareness and acceptance, then things do transform.
It's interesting that you shared that as your example, because I've been experiencing that myself. I definitely feel very nervous when I feel like someone wants to consume me. And I'm very fortunate that I can take it from my immediate family, but anyone else that tries to consume me or own me or
correct,
tell me what my worldview is as if it will make them happy, like getting me to conform to their worldview, I run a mile every single time. And I was actually speaking to my homeopath who I check in with. He's like the person, we all have a sort of like go-to person where we know that we are held, we are listened to, and also reflected things back to. So I connected in with my homeopath, and all that came up was I need to lean into it and to see what happens. Like, is it going to kill me? Probably not. What am I going to learn?
No, it's not.
Yeah. What am I
a lot of the other learnings for me was also, and this is an ongoing learning, is again, it's part of the boundaries element, which is to recognize that if something's not okay, something doesn't feel good, to let the other person know and go, look, I'm noticing that this isn't actually resonating for me. So it's not, but making it clear, like you're not rejecting them, or you're not abandoning them, but you're just recognizing that maybe there's a value or there's a boundary that needs to be put into place. And it's also a case for there to be negotiation, because I can put in a request and go, well, how is that for you? Like, what's, where's the middle ground here? And so often for me in the past, it's been, if I haven't spoken up, it's because it's come from a place of fear that there's going to be a retribution or some kind of punishment that the other person will unleash in me if I don't actually agree with them or don't go along with what they want. There's going to be some kind of detrimental consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally hear you there. Wow, we've spoken about so much, haven't we, Nicholas? So many really yummy things to like consider. Right, so let's get to the Higher Self Expo. So it's coming up. It's on the 17th and 18th of July this year. And the theme is where science meets spirituality. So you're one of the Australian hosts for your region, and you're also a presenter. So what are you going to be presenting about? Can you share a bit about that?
Yes. So getting back to, again, the good old heart, which we started on, I'm going to be sharing with people how through accessing the portal, you can call it the epicenter of your being, the heart portal, and moving into that space, we can then move beyond our human personality and move into the quantum field. And so what I'm going to be talking about, but we're going to be having a practical live experience, is how can you connect to different morphic fields of resonance. So in the quantum field, everything already exists. And so I'm going to share with people that through the use of symbols, which really act as keys and doorways, we can access different energies and different frequency domains, which then ultimately can support us in everything in our life through healing and integration, but also for manifestation. How do we access information, new experiences, and things that we don't even know exist through morphic field resonances? And so it's a really powerful way to be able to expand what we already know, to go beyond what we already know, and to stay open to those possibilities. So it's an interactive experience, practical, and of course it really is where science meets spirituality, because science is all about resonance and coherence, frequency, but then there is, I will be sharing the mystical element, which is where the spiritual, the spirituality lies, where we don't really know all the answers, and is there an underlying intelligence that permeates through everything and everyone that is guiding and orchestrating life.
Yes, I love that. Obviously, I've been doing quite a few interviews, speaking to fellow presenters, and I've only like heard you and one other person say they're doing a practical demonstration, and I love the idea of doing that because I think it's truly engaging. You know, when we're using a medium where you can't physically engage, I think that's wonderful. So that's one I'm going to definitely watch out for. If somebody's been listening to this and thinking, "Wow, Nicolas, I really want to work with you," what's the best way they can reach you? What's your preferred method?
I think if they come to my website, lionheartcoaching.com.au, there's a contact form. They can send me a form. But really, the best way, is I like to get to know people. So, let's have a conversation. Let me get a sense of who you are and where you are and what's going on in your life and what is it that you really need. Because a lot of people think they need something, but actually what they really need could be something very different. So that is only really kind of extrapolated out through by connecting and getting to know someone. So really through the website, that would be the best. I also do have a private Facebook group called Authenticity Speaks, which is, if someone would like to, hang out and immerse themselves in a whole range of information and knowledge. And I share lots of different types of useful resources and events. That's a more passive kind of way. If someone would like to stay in contact, they can find that group. Authenticity Speaks on Facebook is another way.
Yeah. I'm just making a note of where we are in the conversation so I can put those links up in post-production.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's great. So, not only have people got a taster of, what you're like and what you stand for, and they get the chance to see if it resonates, but they can also connect with you, have a conversation with you, and then just take it from there. That's wonderful. Right. Here's my killer question. Okay. And this is the last question. What would you like to leave people with? If there was like one thought that could change somebody's day to day or their life even, let's get really dramatic and put on the pressure for you. But what one last thought would you leave with people today?
Yeah, I would say that the thought that I'd like to leave is that when we're experiencing any kind of challenge or difficulty or any kind of scenario or situation that feels like this is how my life is, just by taking a few breaths and just dropping into your heart and just allowing your heart to open, and it's almost like seeing the ripples of like a whole galaxy go out. It's like you'll realize that whatever it is that you're going through is going to change at some point and won't even be relevant. In fact, you probably won't even remember it at some point. And so it's just the remembrance that life is always changing. Nothing is fixed. Don't grab onto anything, whether it's amazing or whether it's, shocking. Ultimately, it's not going to matter at some point in time. And so just gaining perspective, and also just remembering that you are connected to everything and everyone. And by moving into the heart space and feeling your oneness with everything, just allows life to be a little bit more easeful.
Yes. Thank you so much, Nicolas. And for using the word easeful again. I noticed you used it right at the start, and I actually made a note of it on my pad and thought, that's a great word. And you just ended us with that. I love that. Thank you so much. Yes, that was a really great interview. Thank you so much. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed myself too. Lots of different topics, and they all seem to coalesce and come together and support each other. And it really has actually been a reflection of my own personal journey. So, really cool. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent. We'll do this again another time then, eh?
Absolutely.
Now, I feel quite calm after that conversation. I feel very at ease, or easeful, as Nicolas said. I hope you enjoyed that. There was something very kind of zen and chill about how Nicolas talks and shares what is his truth and where his research has brought him. I really love the fact that he shares his insights without being pushy, and with a real sort of clarity that you can tell that they're really well formed. He spent a long time coming to this point, I suspect. I really love that. I'm very, very grateful that I had to chat with him, and I'm very grateful that you connected this far in. So If you, just to recap, if you'd like to connect with Nicolas and work with him, all you need to do is go to www.lionheartscoaching.com.au. And you can connect with him there, and in fact, even sign up to have an individual call with him, so that you can have that sort of conversation. You can get started in sort of assessing where your needs are and how Nicolas can help you in particular. If you'd like to hear him speak, or more importantly, if you'd like to feel the energy of his presentation, which is a very practical presentation at the Higher Self Expo, then all you need to do is go to www.higherselfexpo.com, where you can register your free place. If you've enjoyed this conversation and want to see more like this, then just like and subscribe, and feel free to share as well. I like that too. But if you go to my YouTube channel, it's Louisa Tanner Munson, or you can use hashtag feelgoodastrology or hashtag Louisa Tanner Munson, and you should be able to find me over any medium that I'm on. So the usual ones, and also some other ones like Telegram. I'm experimenting a little bit, but anyway, thank you so much for your presence today. Thank you for everything that you share in the world, your intention that is felt by everybody. Thank you for your ease and your grace. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much. Let's connect again. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then why not support today's guest at the Higher Self Expo in July 2021? The Higher Self Expo is a worldwide 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are all sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com.